200 is presented by Moon Guide. Plan your best hunt.
Going into season this past year, I had a lot to look forward to. Thought I had a pretty good game plan. You know, I'm hunting my home farm in Ohio. I was going to be heading back to Illinois, had my Illinois tag. I'm hunting a new farm in Kansas this year that I've never been on before. And I was planning on heading back up to Alberta to hunt with Clay. Felt like I had a solid game plan, but as plans go and as deer hunting goes, it just never seems to work out the way you think it's going to. So on my home farm, I've got a section of probably 50 foot wide and goes 200 yards along the edge of the woods that I've kept in imperial clover and alpha rack, you know, so these deer have got something pretty much year round. Just like always, I've got the 30-06 mineral out year round. Doing everything I can to make sure these bucks are reaching their full antler potential. My backyard is a virtual food plot. You know, I've got every possible trail and wind direction covered with the lone wolves. I've got one spot on my farm where every deer on the farm comes through here. So I've got a banks blind in there so that if one of these target bucks comes through this spot, even with a bad wind, I can get in there in the banks blind. You know, I've got the banks feeders going. I got a banks watering system there. I've got everything back here that I need to hold these bucks here. And when they're in there, no matter what the wind's going on, I've got everything covered. Lefty is a buck that I've known about for 3 years. Ever since the first year I've had my farm. He showed up late November, the first season, pretty busted up. I wasn't even sure he was gonna make it. You know, 140 inches, 145 inches that first year. Last year he, you know, made a pretty good jump, put on some mass. Had some footage of him the day after he shed his velvet, which I'll never forget, out in the beans. Blood red antlers. And then this, you know, summer, had a bunch of trail camera pictures of this buck. Watched him in velvet all summer, and I knew, you know, he didn't make quite as big of a jump as he had the previous season, but I figured he was pushing that 170 range, and that was gonna be my target buck for Ohio. I've also got this big, giant, mature 8-point that I think is, you know, probably 160-inch 8-point that my nephew Logan's gonna be targeting. And I was kind of concerned that maybe this 8, because he had such a big body, might actually be the most dominant buck on my home farm this year. But you can tell by this video clip that Lefty was still king of the hill. I felt like it was a solid plan. 2 big mature bucks here right on my home farm. That was going to be the plan for early season, was try to get both of these bucks on the ground. So it's mid-October, we've got a red moon. Logan and I are going to head out back and try to get a look at this big 8-point. You know, the way the evening's going, we got plenty of action. We got all kinds of deer in front of us in the Whitetail Institute food plot. This really nice buck that I've nicknamed Blade because he had a bladed brow tine the year before shows up, and it's a very tempting deer. I think if I would have given Logan the green light, he would have shot this buck. I think he's only 3.5 though. And right before dark, we finally get a look at the big 8-point. He comes to the edge of the woods, all the deer are kind of heading back into the timber, and he actually never comes out to the food plot. So Lefty's been kind of MIA at home, not sure what's going on with him or where he's ended up. I head over to Illinois. You know, we've got this giant 8-point on camera over there. Over here chasing a big 8-point that we got pictures of. Got a good video of him right in this corner last week. Hitting a scrape and keeping it freshened up with some raw frozen scents. He's a really good deer. Deer I passed 3 times last year. Looked like he had a ton of potential. 3, maybe 4.5 years old. I had a couple encounters with him, and I was really anxious to see what that deer turned into this year. And once we started getting pictures of him, I knew this was a world-class 8-point. I mean, this deer looks like he's pushing 170 inches on his typical frame, plus he's got a big drop, and that was gonna be my target animal in Illinois. That evening, lost camera light, and right after I shut my cameras off, the big 8 comes out. First time I've seen him on the hoof. Like I said, I've got no camera light, wasn't able to videotape it, and that's the last time we ever saw the 8, and have no idea what happened to him. I had also passed a buck the year before. That was a big, heavy 10, shorter tines, mature buck, big animal. I had him come through the Imperial Clover plot one night at like 10 yards and passed him up. I thought that deer had the potential to hit 180 or 90 this year, and had an encounter with him one morning. Well, I'm not really sure how much video I got of that, but that's that big 10 from last year that I passed up a couple times. He doesn't look like he really grew much, but he's a big deer. You know, after getting a good look at him, I really don't think this buck grew a whole lot, if any. You know, still a big, old, mature buck, but just not what I'm interested in putting my tag on here in Illinois. I ended up going to Kansas early in the season, and it seemed like once the bucks out there shed their velvet, they just absolutely vanished, disappeared. We weren't getting anything on camera. That farm ended up being a ghost town in October, and I'm really starting to pay the price for targeting specific bucks, and things just aren't going as planned. You know, going to 4 different places is probably a little bit overkill, but you know, in the way that things happened this past year, like I said, it can be a strategic nightmare, but that's kind of the way the game plan went, and you just got to roll with the punches. It's a big 8-point. Not the buck we're after, though. But the silver lining here is that in October, we had a really big mature buck show up one time on camera in Illinois. And this is a buck I've got some history with. This deer doesn't live on the farm where I'm hunting. He does come through occasionally. It's a really big mature buck. We got one daylight picture of him when he came through mid-October on the red moon. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed, and hopefully this buck's gonna show back up. Here at Raw Frozen Scents, it's all about providing you with fresh, pure, undiluted deer urine that's just plain effective. Raw scents are collected fresh, then immediately frozen and shipped from the farm directly to your door in an insulated container. The natural product that smells like real deer, increasing your odds for success.
And they are going nuts because that smell is in the air.
Raw Frozen Scents were 53.2 times more effective when tested against the competition. It doesn't get any better or fresher than Raw Frozen Scents. So like I said, I think there's a silver lining here that might save my season. Nothing has gone right so far. I haven't been able to catch a break. You know, I'm actually in Kansas in mid-November during the rut. I'm looking at my phone one day, and here I get the second daylight picture of this giant buck in Illinois cruising through my food plot just before dark. And we've only gotten 2 pictures of this buck all year long in daylight, and they've both been right on the red moon. Well, it's down to the last day of my hunt here in Illinois, and I was just right across here. Last night I did a hanging hunt with the custom gear stand, and man, with this west wind blowing 20 miles an hour right in my face, just opted for the blind tonight. he doesn't show back up. He's starting to be a little bit more consistent on the trail cameras. Everything's at night. Whole month of December, I'm trying to keep tabs on this deer, and I'm beginning to think my last opportunity for this deer is going to be this last red moon, the last week of season here in Illinois. Hoping this red moon here for this last weekend is going to be the golden ticket for us, because that's the only real common denominator of when this buck has shown up in the daylight. It's been on the red moon every time. It has been a long, frustrating 4 months so far. I have not filled a buck tag in Illinois, Kansas, or Ohio, so it's been a struggle, but we are going down swinging. So it's getting to be prime time, and I look over, and here come the deer, and I'm starting to get that feeling like it might actually end up happening here. And I'm watching these bucks, they're getting close. I've got, a couple of them within 10 yards of the blind, and they start milling around, hitting the soybeans, and I look over at the opposite end of the field, and there he is. So here's my target buck in the soybeans. I've been filming this buck for 5-10 minutes, it seems like, and I cannot get a clear shot at this deer. He's either facing me as he's feeding, or I've got other deer in between me and him. And the whole time I'm in the blind thinking, as soon as I open up this window, I've got 12 bucks within 30 yards of me. Something is either gonna pick up on the movement of opening the window or catch a whiff of something that's not just right. The good thing is I've got the ozonics going in the blind, so I'm hoping that that's gonna cover me when I pop this window open, because I know that I'm gonna have, seconds to get this done once I crack that window open. This moment is about as intense as a moment can be, I've been hunting solid for 4 months, nothing's gone right. I've got my target buck finally in bow range, and I know this is gonna come down to trying to get this window open and getting on this deer with the camera and the bow and getting an arrow in him. I go to open the window and hadn't even realized that how I had moved my camera to film this deer, my microphone is now in the way. I've got to lower the window, move the camera out of the way, get the window back open, get drawn, and hopefully get a crack at this deer before he bugs out. The deer was leaving, he was bugging out. They knew something was going on. I just basically put that, put that pin on his shoulder and let him have it, and I watched that luminoc disappear right through what looked to be, center of the guts. Gonna go look at my arrow. It's gonna be a long night, but we will see. Went back and reviewed the footage at the cabin, and I did notice that this buck was quartering when the arrow hit him a little bit more than what I thought, so I know he's dead. Fortunately, we've got a local expert, Tracker John. He's agreed to come over the next day. We're gonna give this deer plenty of time. Hopefully Tracker John and Willa are gonna be able to locate this buck for us. Willa? Yep. Right to it. Yeah, right about where you're standing. That's where we stopped. Arrow ended up coming out on the opposite side, right behind the shoulder, so I'm sure we got, you know, guts, liver, lung. The deer didn't go down into the timber more than 100, 150 yards, so it was a short tracking job for John and Willa, and a happy ending to the story. It was hard to tell on the shot how much the deer angled and if the arrow got up into anything, you know, other than the guts. But
you just never know, but it turned out to be everything we were hoping it was.
Yeah.
And beautiful deer. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your help too. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, it's January 15th, the last day of bow season here in Illinois, and I finally caught up with this big guy Friday the 13th. Lucky for me and unlucky for him. My 13th whitetail over 170 with a bow on the 13th. And after the last 4 months of struggling, 5 or 6 trips here to Illinois, going to Kansas, striking out at home, this is a way to wrap up the season. Shot him on the last red moon here in January, and I really don't know what else to say. It's just been such a tough season, and to wind it up like this with this amazing of an animal that I've been after since early October, I just could not be happier. Thanks to Mike and Keaton for having me over here for the last 20 years and enjoying the hunting and the friendship over here. Just like I said, I just could not be happier with this buck. Really a testament to the Moon Guide and the Red Moon. You know, that was the only common denominator with this buck. The couple times that he did show up on daylight, and kind of threw all my eggs in one basket for the last red moon of the season over here. Can't believe the mass of this deer. Just a big, old, mature Illinois buck that has really made my season, because it's been a long one, mentally and physically, but just goes to show you persistence pays off when it comes to chasing these big, mature whitetails.